All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Dive into Real Estate Investing for Newbies podcast. I have a very special guest, another good guest again today. Name is Chris Arnold. Chris is absolutely killing it in the wholesaling business. Actually, he's in Mexico and he does a lot of his business virtually, which is a good thing. But today, Chris will talk about something that I don't know anybody else is doing, and that's basically radio advertising for real estate or maybe any type of other real estate business that you're doing. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, man, excited to be here. Glad to come in and add some value and talk about this hot topic of radio. A lot of people are interested in it right now.
Yes, sir. If I had a bell, I'd probably ring it like Tom Cruise.
That's exactly right.
So, Chris, man, tell us a little about yourself, how you got started, and currently, where you at. I know I kind of went ahead, but tell us where you're at right now, like where you are actually staying, and how you got started in this business.
Yeah, man. So I've been in real estate now 15 years. So I'm kind of at that place where I'm starting to feel like one of the veterans, right? As long as I've been around. I got my start being a real estate agent. I read, and I think when I say this book impacted an entire generation of people, but it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm always amazed at how many people go back to that being a monumental read. And so for me, I always wanted to utilize business as a vehicle to impact the world. So my passion has always been the freedom and the resources that real estate can provide. And so at the time, I just finished up grad school. I didn't know anything about business. And all I knew was like real estate seems like a good vehicle. So what I did was I went and got my license. And I spent the first several years just being a real estate agent, hustling for commissions. And you know how it is. If you stay in it and you stick to it, you just add in, more pillars of revenue. And so I built up a really large team for the real estate side, went independent, then launched the investment side probably about 9-10 years ago, wholesaling, fix and flip, all of that. I'm a person that really loves to build out teams and remove myself from the equation as quickly as possible so that I can kind of move on to the next thing that I'm passionate about. And so at this point where I'm at right now, we run Multipliers Brotherhood, which is a brotherhood for the top real estate investors in the country, helping these men with legacy fulfillment, making sure that they finish the race that they've started and don't disqualify themselves. And then I live full-time down in Mexico. We run a completely virtual office. I'm out of the day-to-day. So, freedom comes in all forms, right? We all want freedom of time. We want freedom of resources. We want freedom of thought. I also wanted freedom of location. I didn't want to be, chained to the city that I was doing deals in. Dallas was cool for about 12 years, but I kind of, evolved from that. I wanted to be down in the Caribbean. So because we're a virtual office, I live full-time down in Tulum for the last 4 years, Mexico.
Man, that's great. So your what you call it is the multitude of brothers. That's the name of it.
Multipliers Brotherhood.
Brotherhood. Is that similar to Life and Air a little bit?
Pretty much. I know Sean McCoskey well, and we have some overlap philosophically. And here's fundamentally the problem that we're solving. I think the biggest challenge that entrepreneurs have is isolation. So what happens is as you mature as an entrepreneur, you tend to begin to leave some of the relationships that you started with because your friends that work a 9 to 5 don't understand what you're dealing with and they don't want to hear you complain because they're like, you own your own business. Like, what do you have to complain about? Right. You can only share so much with an employees and then your spouse can only take so much. So what I see happen is that the higher the influence grows for the entrepreneur, the more alone they become. And so in that isolation, pressure kicks in, and normally that stress will come out sideways because they don't have a community of brothers that can support them. So, man, I see the same thing. It's usually, entrepreneurs, we're pretty excessive, right? So I see drug and alcohol abuse, extramarital affairs, porn addiction, stuff like that. So they're doing everything they can to medicate the
Right.
isolation because they don't really have a group of men that they can open up to. And the problem is if, you've got 200,000 followers on Instagram and you run a podcast and all those type of things, you got to hide that shame because there's too much at stake, right? Now you have a ton of employees and families that you're responsible for. But what ends up happening is these men put on the mask as long as they can, but it eventually cracks and they make a decision that costs them everything, in a day of what took 20 years to build. And I think we've all seen leaders topple from the top, even athletes. It's really difficult to see. So what we focus on is really the preservation of these men to make sure that they fulfill the unique contribution that they've been called to do. And I only really think that that can happen in a community where men feel safe to talk about the hard things.
Yeah, I agree. Safe, having a safe place is very important. And like you say, especially dealing with, there's a lot of pressure and people think money could solve their problems. But money
just makes it worse.
Yeah, it only
That's the problem.
intensifies it because if you never really had that ground foundation, and then you get something else where you never really conquered whatever you're dealing with, then it just expands whatever you're dealing with. So yeah, I totally agree on that, man. I probably could talk about this all day because that's really what I like to talk about is more life than anything. But let's get into this real estate. So you've done about 2,500 deals, about 15 years, real estate agent, built the brokerage up. So currently, do you still have the business in Texas right now, in Dallas, Texas?
Yeah, we still have our wholesale business. So again, wholesale, most of them, but we'll cherry pick and do kind of light rehabs or wholesaling. So everything we have as an exit strategy really falls into one of those three buckets. Either we're going to wholesale it, we're going to wholetail it, or we're going to do a light kind of lipstick rehab and try to maximize the most. So I did start rehabbing. That's how we initially grew. And we were doing pretty large rehabs. And I realized I'd rather take the fast nickel than the slow dime. Right. It's, in my opinion, it's more scalable and it's a lot less stressful because rehabbing and dealing with subcontractors is not always that much fun.
Absolutely. I agree. So how did you stumble on the radio aspect of marketing? Because like we were talking before the podcast, we got so many people that are marketing the same channel, hitting the same people from direct mail to cold calling to text messaging to PPC and all these different channels. But how has radio actually changed? Like radio has become a game changer, obviously, for you, your students. How has that been more effective than any other marketing channel since you've been doing wholesaling?
Yeah, so I have a long history with radio. We've been doing radio now for 10 years, which is a long time. Wow. I can't tell you another marketing channel that I've kept around that long because either they were too much of a roller coaster or they got saturated with competition. But here's like where I like to lay the foundational thinking behind this, right? So I like to call radio the marketing channel that everyone knows about, but nobody's using.